Since the Wright Brothers' test voyage in the early 20th century, the aviation industry has risen by leaps and bounds. However, business has seen a number of strange events that have changed the course of history, such as the disappearance of planes during flights. Hundreds of people on board the planes vanished as a result of some of these instances. On that note, we are going to talk about 10 major airplane disappearances around the globe. Are you ready to take a flight with us? Let's move on. Number 10. Flight 19, December 5, 1945. The United States Navy launched 5 torpedo bombers on a normal training trip over the Bermuda Triangle during World War II. Because the Bermuda Triangle is known for devouring planes, it's no surprise that all 14 crewmen on the 5 military planes vanished without a trace. However, the Navy deployed another 13 soldiers for a search and rescue effort aboard a Marine flying boat a few hours later. They didn't even return it. Flight 19 remains one of aviation's mysteries to this day, reminding us to stay away from the triangle. Number 9. Air France Flight 447. When Air France Flight 447 from Rio de Janeiro to Paris disappeared in 2009, it took 5 days for any wreckage to be discovered, and nearly 2 years for its black boxes to be discovered, at a depth of roughly 4,000 meters, 13,000 feet. The Airbus 330's 228 passengers and crew members were all killed. Despite a warning ringing in the cabin for over a minute, the autopilot disengaged, most likely due to ice crystals freezing the airspeed gauges, and the pilots maneuvered the plane at too steep an angle to maintain speed, finally stalling it. These allegations were denied by Air France. Number 8. Flying Tiger Flight 739. On its approach to the Philippines from Guam in mid-March 1962, during the early phases of the Vietnam War, United States Army Flying Tiger Flight 739 vanished over the Pacific Ocean's supposedly deep Mariana Trench. Employees of a Standard oil tanker in the vicinity reported seeing a bright explosion in the sky about an hour after the jet's final contact, which some investigators have connected to the crash. There were no distress calls recorded by any air traffic control centers, making it impossible to pinpoint when things started to go wrong for those on board. Number 7. Lady Be Good. On April 4, 1943, a U.S. Army Air Corps B-24D called Lady Be Good took part in a bombing attack on Italy. It was the mission's lone plane that did not return to its Libyan base. The jet was thought to have crashed in the Mediterranean Sea, according to officials. A thorough search was conducted, but no trace of the plane or its crew was discovered. An oil survey exploration group was taking overhead shots of the Libyan desert in 1958 when they noticed the aircraft. The plane had crashed, but the desert circumstances had maintained it well. The bodies of 8 members of the crew were discovered in the desert in 1960. A notebook by the co-pilot, Robert Toner, was discovered among the dead, revealing how the 9 fled away before the accident, with 8 surviving. 5 of the survivors gave up after walking 85 miles, but the other 3 continued to walk until they perished. Vernon L. Moore's remains were never discovered. It's one of aviation's oldest mysteries. Number 6. Indian Air Force Crash. In July 2016, an Indian Air Force Antonov AN-32 twin-engine turboprop cargo plane with 29 passengers on board vanished while flying over the Bay of Bengal. The plane was on its way to Port Blair from the Tambaran Air Force Station. The search and rescue effort, which involved submarines, surface vessels, and aircraft, became India's greatest search for a lost plane at sea in history. In September, the operation was called off, since no evidence of it had been found. Number 5. Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571. Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571 was lost in the Andes Highlands in 1999. There were 45 passengers on board. The search expedition was called off after only 8 days because their chances of survival were so slim. Some died instantaneously, while others died from injuries and the cold of the mountains. Survivors were left with few alternatives and little hope as the days passed. Their limited food sources ran out quickly, and they finally decided to consume flesh from the bodies of their deceased friends and teammates. Nando Paredo and Roberto Canessa eventually walked for 12 days through the mountains to save themselves and 14 other passengers on December 23, 1972. Alive, a 1993 film based on their experience, was inspired by their survival. Number 4. EgyptAir Flight 990. On October 31, 1999, a normal aircraft from JFK Airport in New York to Cairo went down in the Atlantic, killing all 217 passengers and crew members. The Egyptian Civil Aviation Authority, ECAA, cited technical failure, although the National Transportation and Safety Board, NTSB, of the United States speculated that the pilot had committed suicide. "I trust in God," the pilot's final recorded remarks. The Mossad, the CIA, and Egyptian Islamists have all been implicated by conspiracy theorists, but no one knows who or what shot down Flight 1990. EgyptAir eventually discontinued Flight 1990, and the carrier no longer flies to Los Angeles. Number 3. Stardust Accident. In 1947, an airliner vanished without a trace. Widespread searches turned up no sign of the jet or its 11 passengers, prompting accusations of espionage, sabotage, and even extraterrestrial abduction to swirl around the story of the missing prop jet. However, 50 years later, glacial ice in the Andes thawed, revealing wreckage that looked uncannily similar to the Stardust. We now know that the plane crashed into a snowy mountain range and was instantaneously buried in an avalanche upon impact. This mystery was ultimately solved after a half-century of glacial melting. Number 2. Amelia Earhart. Amelia Earhart, a female pilot who was lost in 1937 while attempting to circumnavigate the world, is undoubtedly the most famous plane disappearance of all time. She was flying over the Pacific with her navigator, Captain Fred Noonan, at the time. She was confirmed dead 2 years later after a huge search effort failed to discover any sign of her or her twin-engine plane. Number 1. Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370. The 2014 loss of Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 was the most recent aviation disaster. The incident, which involved a Malaysia Airlines Boeing 777-200ER aircraft, drew widespread worldwide attention. The plane took off from Malaysia's Kuala Lumpur International Airport and was bound for China's Beijing Capital International Airport. The plane was carrying 239 individuals, including 227 passengers from 15 nationalities and 12 crew members. The last time the plane spoke with air traffic control was at 01:19 a.m. The aircraft then vanished from both the military and secondary radars. The crew never transmitted any distress signals, and there was very little cloud cover in the area. The disappearance seemed odd. That's our video about the top 10 planes that went missing. I hope you enjoyed it, and if so, then give it a thumbs up and ring the notification bell button for our latest updates. And if you have any ideas for videos you would like to see, please let us know. Thank you for watching this one. I'll see you next time.